you can assist me to see whether I'm audible.
Good afternoon, Eddie. I can confirm that you're audible.
All right. Thank you very much, my sister, for that confirmation. It is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome you to the VFX webinar on the topic we have titled Investing on the VFEX. You will notice that this webinar is happening right at the time when we are also in the Global Money Week. So the Global Money Week is running under the theme, Plan Your Money, Plant Your Future. So this theme is basically focusing on raising awareness on the implications of individual financial behavior on one's financial future. My name is Edwin Mutami, and on behalf of the VFEX, the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, allow me to extend our gratitude for you taking off your time to be with us today. So first of all, let me introduce our speakers to this panel discussion on the topic investing on the VFEX. Our first panelist is Robert Mbaiwa. Robert Mbaiwa is the head of Victoria Falls Stock Exchange Markets, and he is responsible for the primary and secondary markets, which comprise the new and existing listings, product development, market data trading and operations on the VFEX. Our second speaker or panelist is Ms. Chieza Chonzi. She's a research and investment analyst at FBC Holding Securities. And then finally, our final panelist is Mr. Brighton Mutingwende. Mr. Brighton Mutingwende is the Senior Finance Manager at CBZ Asset Management. So that is the team that is going to be with us during this panel discussion. So our first panelist, ladies and gentlemen, will be Mr. Robert Mbaiwa. So let me first of all welcome Robert Mbaiwa and confirm whether we can also hear him. Welcome, Robert Mbaiwa.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, everyone, for joining in.
Okay, thank you. We can confirm that we can quite clearly hear you, Robert. So, Robert, to kickstart our webinar, would you kindly share to our audience the different securities that are listed on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange? I'm pretty much sure that people, as they look for opportunities to invest, they would really want to know the various securities which are listed on the VFX markets. Kindly share with us, Mr. Robert.
Thank you very much, Eddie. I just want to take this opportunity, I think perhaps before I answer your question, but just to highlight to people what the Victoria Falls Exchange is all about. This is a USD exchange that has been formed primarily to give relevance in terms of the role that we do in terms of mandate for capital raising. So this instrument really, this exchange is 100% owned by ZSC, and it came up as a result of the statutory instrument 196 of 2020. So we are just like in other exchange. The only difference with the ZSC is that we trade exclusively in USD, and we can trade any other security that any exchange would do. So currently, if you look on in terms of what we do have equities, we do have depository receipts. We are looking forward to add other securities like your exchange traded funds and commodities. So currently, we do have just two, which is the debt and equity instruments. And being the ordinary shares and the depository receipts.
All right, thank you, Robert. Maybe I'll just pause a bit and ask our audience, should you have any questions, kindly throw in your questions in the chat box, or you can also raise your hand. We'll be able to pick as we go. and we want it to be as quite engaging as possible. So we also want you to be part and parcel of the proceedings. So thank you very much, Robert, for that descriptive of the securities that are listed on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. So somebody in the lobby there would also want to know, Robert, what are the benefits that are associated with investing in these securities that are listed on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange?
Okay, thank you very much, Eddie. I think we have to look at it, I think, from two perspectives. One, from an issuer perspective, and also secondly, from an investor perspective. So if you are an issuer, one of the advantages that you have in terms of listing on VFEX is your ability to raise capital for either your operations or whatever you want to do in terms of your business model. And if you look at the challenges that we have been having, especially on the ZSE, one of the things which is actually critical for VFEX is the valuation. Because we are trading exclusively in USD, it's easier to value a company based on the fundamentals. So it is an important part in terms of getting to know what the company is all about. And you are not going to be affected by the fluctuations which happens in terms of the currency. It's a major part. That if you look at the exchange control provisions that we have, companies that manage to raise money through the exchange, their funds are not subject to the mandatory liquidation thresholds that you normally see for companies, for other companies in the mainland. And you can have that account, those accounts sitting offshore. All you need to do is to make an initial application. Therefore, it helps companies to plan in terms of what they can do in terms of the funds. So it's a major important component for the companies that are currently listed. So when you then come to investors, one of the most important things is you look at the round trip, the overall cost of trading on ZSE. It's actually much lower compared to what you see on the ZSE. So on average, the total, the round trip is about 2.140%. So there is lower transaction costs for people who are trading on VFEX. Secondly, for dividends, if you're a foreign shareholder, on ZSE, the dividends are taxed at, dividends withholding tax is at 10%. And if you're a foreign shareholder on ZSE, it's 5%. The other advantage that you have, there are no restrictions really that you find on ZSE. So on VFEX. So just look at what is currently happening on ZSE, where if you buy your shares, if you sell them within 180 days, you are then going to be penalized and you're going to pay capital gains withholding tax at a higher rate of about 4%. So if you look at that cost, overall cost alone, it's significant. You need to break even perhaps at more than 7-point-something%. And it's trading. What trading is all about, it's all about reducing the cost of transactions. And the other advantage that you have for investors as well is that there is no capital gains withholding tax. If you realize the transaction cost on ZSE, they include a 1% capital gains withholding tax when you're disposing your shares, which is not what you get when you are on the other side. Therefore, it's more attractive to invest on VFEX at the moment as compared to ZSE. But overall, when you look at ourselves in terms of comparison, we also tried to benchmark with other markets, and we are not far off in terms of the overall cost, because the main objective in terms of why we set up VFEX was to compete with other exchanges. So in a nutshell, those are the benefits from an investor perspective and from an issuer perspective. Hi, Eddie.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert, for that detailed explanation on the benefits of investing in the VFX listed securities. So I think before I proceed to my next question, Robert, let me jump to the questions that are being posed by our guests. So I'll start with a question that is just popped in from Tinomutenda Timire. So Tinomutenda Timire, Robert, is asking, he wants to inquire, how do you register to participate, and are there brokers that should be dealt with in the process on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange?
Okay, in terms of the process, it's just the same. I think we'll start through by just telling you that we do have the VFX Direct app, where you can download the app on your phone and you input your KYC documents. Your KYC, basically your photo, who you are, source of income, and then you register to be to get a CSD account. When you register to CSD account, within that process, you have to select someone who's going to be your broker. As you are aware, when you come through the market, you don't come to the market directly, but you come through a member of the exchange. And why that is important is to ensure that all transactions that are then executed on the market, there is someone who takes responsibility in the event of any problems in terms of the settlement of funds. Therefore, they have to agree to say, when you take through the participant, you are able, they will be able to meet the risks which are coming as a result of onboarding you on their platform. So that is one part. Or you can approach one of our 21 members directly, where you actually go and fill in a form that tells the broker who you are, how you want to invest, what's your timeline, and these guys would help you in terms of then picking and choosing, because they do have research department, and these research departments, some of them would analyze stocks and they give you a perspective depending on your mandate to say what are you trying to achieve. They also to understand the sources of money, where you are getting your money, and after that they can then give an appropriate advice commensurate with your own unique situation. So it is important for people who are trading for the first time. I encourage you to go through the broker. They help you in terms of formulating your strategy, the risks that are involved. And after that, when you get used to then trade, you can then be able to trade on your own, because you would have an understanding. But if it's your first time, I know some people could be technically gifted. If you're technically gifted, obviously you have to go through that route. But if you are not, it is always encouraged for someone to handhold you and then give you appropriate advice, in which case you will be able to make the right and informed decision in terms of your investment. So in a nutshell, if you're going through the VFX Direct, you download your app, you fill in your details, you supply your details, you wait for your CSD number. Once the CSD number comes, the broker confirms. Once the broker confirms, you load your money into your wallet. When you load your money into wallet, when it takes about 72 hours to load the money into your wallet, but usually we do it within 24 hours. And after that, once the money reflects in your account, you're good to trade. So it's again the similar process. Accounts can be opened in a day or less than a day when you go to brokers. So that is the simple process in terms of account opening.
All right, thank you, Robert, for responding to that. I hope Tino has been answered there. So there are other two questions that I will also pose to you, Robbie, coming from Chris and Farai. They seem to be quite related. So Chris is asking, how do foreign investors participate on the VFX? And Farai is also asking same sort of questions by saying, as a Zimbabwean based in the diaspora, can I register as an investor? What is the process there? Kindly, Robert, highlight to Chris and Farai on this process.
Yes, again, it's almost a similar process. So what is key is that you still have to open a custodial account. Which custodial account is where your money is going to sit. So if you're sitting, say, in any country, you still need to have a CSD account, and you still need to fund that account and allow you to trade. What we are working in, obviously, is to say, can I fund directly from my MasterCard or from my Visa card? And that is the work that we're currently doing on the VFX Direct. So as it stands currently, you are still going to go through the same process of downloading an app, sending your KYC, and someone then opens an account. Every money that goes out of this country, you have to have opened a local Nostral account, and that Nostral account is the account that is going to be used for the purposes of trading and the loading and repatriation of money will be actually coming from that account. So we still have work. We are still doing work in terms of making sure that it's seamless. But currently, that is the process. You still have to open a local Nostral account.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Robert, for those responses. I pretty much hope that Chris and Farai have been answered here. And once again, to our audience, I'll keep on asking you to continuously throw in questions or comments, whatever the case may be, in the chat box, or you can raise your hand so that we can proceed engaging together. So, Robert, my next question to you as we proceed is you have actually mentioned and described these various securities listed on the VFEX. I'm pretty much sure that somebody in the audience there would want to know, how does one then measure the performance of VFEX to see whether it is viable to make an investment decision to invest in these securities?
Okay, so one of there's various performance matrices that you can use to try to measure performance. So if you are looking from a company, from a VFX wide perspective, you could use the indices, and the indices measure the overall performance of all the companies which are listed on VFEX on a day-to-day basis. So we do have an all-share index currently that is tracking the daily movement in terms of how the companies have performed on the market. Secondly, you can also use market capitalization. Market capitalization is simply the aggregate value of companies listed on the market. So if you're tracking individually, you can also look at the value of that company on a daily basis, or collectively the VFX market cap, which includes all the securities which are listed on the market. Therefore, it's another metric that you use depending on what you are trying to do. If you're trying to measure liquidity, you can use the volume and values which are currently traded on a daily basis. You can also use the number of trades. So there are various things, various metrics that you can use depending on what exactly you are trying to measure. So for companies, I think one of the things that you need to do could be your earnings per share, your price to earnings ratio. So all those things you can use in terms of measuring performance, either for an individual company or for the market is for a market wide. So you need it really depends. The statistic that you want to derive really depends with the use that you want to derive from the statistic that you are calculating. So some of this information, like the price sheets, if you want to see the price trends of a certain security, you can ask for us, for our team. They will be able to share with you all the information, the historical information. You do your trend analysis, you can see how the company is performing over time. So there's so many things that you can are available depending on how you want to use that information.
All right, thank you, Robert. I'm picking one more question from the gallery. There's Dennis McCoffey. Dennis McCoffey is asking Robert, do I need an additional CSD account for VFEX if I've already opened an account on the ZSE?
Yeah, definitely, yes, because the accounts will be sitting in two different accounts. One account is for the ZWL and another account is for the VFX. So you definitely need, and the sequencing of those accounts is also different. Therefore, you definitely need an additional CSD number if you want to trade on VFEX. Usually on migration, usually they generate numbers. So when you normally come and say, I have an existing account, if your account that you currently hold securities on migration, say from ZSE to VFX, we automatically generate an account that you can use for the purposes of trading, and our CSD through your broker or your custodian will be able to share that with you. Yeah, that's the response to Dennis' comment.
Okay, thank you. I think he has actually confirmed by thanking you there. And then Bruce has posed another question. He's saying, do I fund with prepaid MasterCard or FCA Nostro?
So currently the arrangement, like I indicated earlier on, we are on the first phase where currently you are being funding through your Nostro account. But we are working on the VFX Direct that we need to have some integrating protocols that we need with the Visa and MasterCard so that you can transfer from your prepaid MasterCard into a wallet for the purposes of trading. But currently we are using the FCA account. The MasterCard and Visa cards are currently work in progress.
All right, thank you, Robbie. What Bruce has been answered. There's also a follow-up question again from Pritchard. So Pritchard is asking you, Robert, what criteria do I use to choose a broker on the VFX, and how do I get in touch with these brokers?
Okay, it's a difficult one because usually their market performance is not easily available on the market. But one of the things that gives you comfort in dealing with any of the brokers is that all these brokers are registered with us, and they are also registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Therefore, they meet certain specific minimum requirements that should give you comfort should you decide to trade. Therefore, you can choose anyone, but basically it's your choice. You also have to do a bit of research to understand the broker that you are choosing. One of the things that you always need to understand is that brokers would have a certain strategy. Some may decide to say, do you want to have retail clients on your book, and the minimum subscription can be different from one broker to the next. So brokers do have different strategies. Some would want to take anyone, some may not really want to take anyone. So you have to sometimes also do your research to help you in terms of choosing the broker that you think. So one of the things that you can easily do this is to just go on their websites. What are the things that they can offer? What is the advice which they normally give to people? So those are indications that you can quickly say, okay, maybe I need to engage these people. The content that you find on each and every one of these brokers' websites can also give you an insight in terms of who to select when you want to then make an investment decision. Even the people that are really running those institutions who should also help you in terms of coming up with the decisions.
All right, thank you very much, Robert. I'm noticing that questions are pouring in the chat box there. So our audience, bear with us. We are definitely going to be answering all these questions. But in the interest of time and the program lining up, allow me for now to move on to our next panelist to discuss on another area that is quite also important in the ecosystem of the capital markets. So for this moment and juncture, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce once again Mr. Brighton Tingwende. Brighton, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Edwin. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you, Brighton, for joining us. So as I have indicated before, Brighton Tingwende is the Senior Finance Manager at Douglas Asset Management. So Brighton, welcome once again to this panel discussion on investing on the VFEX. So in the ecosystem of capital markets, there are important players, and you are one of them on the asset management side. Would you care to share to us, Brighton, the roles of an asset manager in the ecosystem of capital markets and on the VFEX?
Thank you, Edwin, and good afternoon to everyone who is logged in. So the asset manager plays a pivotal role in the investment in the sense that you find that investment issues or investment concepts, they are complex in themselves. So sometimes when an individual or even a corporate is not directly involved in the day-to-day running of capital markets or does not participate frequently, they may not know how these markets operate. They may know even how to structure some of the deals if they do require funding or they want to invest excess funds. So the asset manager is coming in between the investors and other market players, including the financial markets. So you have your brokers, you have your stock exchange as a market, you have investment products. Because of the expertise that is sitting with the asset manager, they can relay that information to the investors in a more simpler language that they can understand. Over and above that, it is also the duty of asset managers to give insights of market trends, what is happening in an economy, in the market, what is happening to specific companies, counters, and the impact on the investment side. So you find that we are able to interpret whatever information that is coming out from the companies or whatever activities that are happening. I think I would mention things to do with your monetary policy statements that are released by the central bank, the policy rates on interests, exchange rates. You have your from the Ministry of Finance, which speaks of government expenditure as well as the revenues that are being collected. So all that information is important to the investors for them to make decisions whether to invest more, which counters, which sectors are performing. It is the duty of asset managers to make sure that that information is being interpreted and availed to investors so that they are able to make a decision. I think the other role was relates to the traditional portfolio management, where we are sitting with the funds of pension funds, private equity players, as well as corporates. So we have a duty to find the best performing assets where we can deploy those funds. I could give an example of the current VFEX, which is also topical. Most of our pension funds, corporates, as well as individuals, they were sitting on USD balances, that is money, and there were no alternative opportunities to deploy those funds. So the coming of this market, it's coming at a right time, where we are also looking at opportunities where we can deploy our US dollar funds. That is our traditional role, to ensure that those funds are invested, they are managed well for the benefit of the investors. We also have to present to them on a periodic basis. It's usually on a quarterly basis on how their investments are performing, doing against the market, against other markets, and also the strategies, decisions, as well as the process that we are putting through, so that we manage well the investors' funds. I think I would give those as key functions and role of the asset manager in the investment market.
Thank you, Brighton, for that detailed explanation relating to the roles of asset managers. So there's also a question, I think it's more of a follow-up to the descriptions you have given as it relates to the asset managers. So it's Tendai, he's asking what is portfolio construction management process and how the VFEX as an exchange can aid in this process?
Right. There are two aspects. So I would want to separate these. If you are dealing with with individual or private player, then you are also dealing with an institution. Right. If you are dealing with your institutions, I would suggest what we call the top-down approach. So in simpler terms, you are scanning. The top part is you are scanning the whole market, the events that are happening, the current trends. In that part, you are looking at the risks, the potential risks that you are likely to face, the events, the key events. Of course, if it is Zimbabwe, you are looking at rainfall patterns, whether we are going to receive good rains, our agricultural sector is going to perform. Those are key issues. Then you're also looking at even events like the elections that are coming in. There are also activities like your spending patterns. They are likely to change given these events. You are likely to interrogate even issues like whether Zimbabwe has received funds from IMF, like what happened, I think, in the few years before, because it is also likely to boost the expenditure of that country. Those are the things that you are looking at a broader scale. Population trends are also key. Consumer tastes, preferences, what do they like in terms of food, then in terms of technology, what are they doing? So this one, it's more like you are scanning the whole economy to give you insights of the potential companies that are going to perform better. Then when you scan the whole economy, you drill down to the sectors to say, given the scanning you have done on the broader economy, which sectors are likely to benefit given these trends? So the sectors, the traditional sectors, you look at your technology, you look at your consumer segment, which can be staples or the luxury aspect. You look at your mining, look at your agricultural sectors. So you look at the best or the companies that are likely to outperform. I would give an example of mining that happened before when VFX was introduced. You find that there was that 100% retention on foreign currency earnings. So mining companies were persuaded to list on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. What it also meant is that in terms of their operations, it was going to be easier in meeting capital requirements, given how capital intensive it is, and also I think meeting their other operational expenditures. So if you are following those trends, it's likely easier to conclude that the mining companies are likely to outperform. Of course, the other issues you will also get or commodity prices on the international markets that will also affect them. Then as for the rainfall patterns, obviously, you would make a conclusion on how well the agricultural sector is likely to perform, whether it's your normal grains as maize, the horticultural aspect. Then you can also look at the technology, given how the trends, the current trends like the social media, etc. So when you have drilled down to the sectorial and make a conclusion on the likely sectors that are going to outperform, the last aspect is which companies outperform in that sector. Because a sector can have maybe 5 to 10 companies, but maybe out of those, only 3 or 4 are likely to benefit from the current trends, maybe given their competitive advantage or easier access of capital. So when you drill down to that, then you can then pick the companies that are likely to perform from those sectors. This is the traditional way that's can.
Hello, Brighton. We seem to have lost you there. Hello, Brighton.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I think we can now hear you.
Robert,
Please, kindly proceed. We can now hear you,
okay.
Brighton. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So an individual, we were saying individual and private players, they are not sophisticated. We would want to approach it in a more simpler way. We do propose specific counters that we think would outperform beyond 1 year. So usually we would have selected recommended counters from the investment team. So that is the one that we do sell to private players. But in terms of construction, it's simple. We just do look at the balance sheets of those companies, the specific products that are being sold. They are products that you safely conclude there's no way a person would not eat or drink. So those are simpler, and in terms of even when retail investors are making decisions on their own, they would like to, I think, make conclusions from that. But just a disclaimer, Edwin, you would find that maybe in terms of examples that I might be giving, it's for the purposes of making easier to understand. It should not be taken or construed as investment advice. Even after this, would encourage listeners to approach the investment advisors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Brighton. That was quite detailed. And then there is a follow-up question. I think it's also further to a question that we've asked Robert, but this one is directed to you, Brighton. So the guest there is asking that what are other investment instruments that are available for considerations by asset managers?
We do have many options, Edwin. So we are happy that our capital markets are evolving. There are many products that are being sold, that are trading on the capital market. So if you look at your VFEX, young as it is, it already has debt instruments that can be bought. It already has, it has listed depository receipts for a counter that is trading on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Then if you look at also the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, we can talk of a real investment trust, where now the units of a property fund can now be sold on a stock exchange. It now makes easier for the investors to invest in property. You understand that maybe the ticket size of a property, we are looking at not less than 50,000 USD. So it becomes difficult for an individual to raise that substantial money to buy a property. So when it is property units, it's easier because for as low as 50 ZWL, you can have that exposure in property. We also have the exchange traded funds. This is just a combination of other equities, which can also be bought at minimal amounts. But all these examples, they are typical equities or hybrid of equities. The other considerations that we also look at has to do with fixed income instruments. They can be in ZWL, can also be in US dollar. We are also looking at unquoted equities or private equity, where we look at specific businesses that are not listed on the stock market to try as much as possible to find value. I would give to the industry. The good thing about stock market is usually when individual investors at their early stages of investing, they have very low funds, which can be meaningful maybe to play part in private equity or in property. You can imagine maybe in fixed income instruments, interest rates, maybe they may be 3% per annum. So how much money you should invest as capital for you to earn substantial money, which can make sense. So usually at an early stage, we do recommend that they become very active on the stock market because of the likely gains that are going to get because of the growth in capital markets, which can as well maybe grow the individual fund. Then when the fund is now grown, the investor can now start to look at also diversifying from the equities. Now they look at bigger ticket investments, which may require substantial funding. So usually at a lower level, we would want as much as possible for the investors to participate on the stock markets.
Okay, Brighton, thank you very much. I think that was quite elaborative and well explained. So to our audience, our guests, I will again come to you and say, please continue to throw in your questions. And if you want to make a comment, you can also raise your hand so that we can progress in an engagement manner. So for now, I will pause Brighton and invite our final panelist. Let me reintroduce here once again. Our third panelist is Chieza Chonzi. Chieza is a research and investment analyst at FBC Securities. Chieza, thank you for joining us and welcome to this panel discussion on investing on the VFX.
Good afternoon, Eddie. Afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, Chieza.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now hear you Quite audible. Thank you very much. Thank you once again for joining us on this webinar.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Right. Chieza, I think the reason why we brought up this webinar is to try and educate our guests on financial education during this Global Money Week. So one of the most important things as it relates to VFEX listed issuers or listed companies, what are known as financial statements. As an analyst, as a research and investment analyst, would you kindly help our audience and our guests to understand what are financial statements and what is their importance to investors on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange?
Okay, thank you, Eddie. So your financial statements are basically records of the financial activities of a company. So it details the company's revenue, its expenditure, its profitability, its cash flows, and a lot of other information. And this information is important to an investor because it allows you to assess the company, and you can therefore assess its performance and decide for yourself whether it's a worthwhile investment.
Okay, thank you, Chieza. So when these financial statements are published, what do you look for as analysts, and how is this information important to investors on the VFEX?
So there's a lot of information contained in financial statements. There's therefore a lot to look out for when a company releases its financial statements. You can start by looking at its revenues. That's how much money is the company bringing in? What do its expenses look like? Is the company profitable? It's also valuable to do a trend analysis of sorts. So you can look at over time, has this company been profitable? Is it making more money? Is it making less money? And what's been affecting its performance? As an investor as well, there are key ratios to look out for. This can be your PE ratio, which is basically a computation of the price of the share relative to the earnings per share. The earnings per share is the value of earnings that one is getting in the company per each share that they hold. And you can look at the dividend yield. The dividend yield shows you by percentage how much you would get out as dividends for each dollar invested in the company. So when you do this analysis, it again gives you a view of how the company is performing, and you can make an informed decision as to whether it's a good investment or not.
Okay, thank you very much, Chieza, for that. So I think as analyst as well, part of what you do is to attend those analyst briefings for these listed companies, which are listed on the VFEX. Our audience, I'm sure they would also want to know why it is important to them as investors to be attending these analyst briefings and AGMs. Would you care to share with our guests why is it very important that when we're invested in these companies which are listed on the VFEX, it is of paramount importance that they take time to attend these analyst briefings as well as AGMs?
Yeah, so at these briefings and at AGMs, it's a formal platform to engage with the executives and management of these companies. So you're really given a chance to interact with them, to ask questions, to get better understanding of the company. So it allows you to deepen your understanding of the company and hear from the stewards of your investment how they are managing the company and what you can expect moving forward. So it's really good platforms to gain more information, to ask questions, to gain knowledge, to deepen your understanding.
Thank you, Chieza. I think there is Tatenda. Tatenda has just put in a question, and I don't know whether it's a he or it's a she. They're asking that what sort of questions can I, as an investor, should be asking during these AGMs and analyst briefings?
Okay, thank you for that question, Tatenda. So again, it's to deepen your understanding of the company. So really, you can ask as much as you need to ask, but you could ask how the company has been performing, why it's been performing a certain way, what management expects to happen in future, how it's navigating the current operating environment, how it plans to drive the company in a certain direction. So yeah, it's really a good platform to learn as much as you can. Again, your questions can be centered around your goals as an investor. So if your objective is to invest in a growth counter, you can ask the management how it intends to grow the company, what its plans are moving forward. If you are investing primarily for dividends, you can ask what the dividend policy is, what they envision it being moving forward.
All right, thank you very much, Chieza. I'm also noticing another question again. I think it's related to one of the ratios you have mentioned when you were actually explaining on what the things that you look for in the published financial statements of listed companies. So the person is asking, she or he is saying you spoke about the price earnings ratios. So they're saying now, when we're looking at VFEX as a stock exchange, would you, I'm trying to paraphrase it. So they're saying, would you consider, or what is your perception or perspective in terms of their valuation as compared to the underlying values of these listed firms? I think I'm not sure whether you've managed to capture it very well, or you can proceed.
I think so. I think I've captured the question.
Okay, please proceed. Please proceed.
So overall, the VFX does appear quite undervalued at the moment. And this might be a consequence of low trading activity. So my perception is that the exchange is quite undervalued at the moment in comparison to the underlying counters.
All right. Thank you, Chieza. I think
Edwin,
for now,
sorry. Edwin, sorry.
Yes, Brighton, please go ahead.
If you can repeat, just the recent question.
Okay, so the recent question, I think it was coming on the background of one of the ratios that Chieza had actually described, the price earnings ratio. So I think the guest here is trying to understand whether the listed securities on the VFEX are undervalued or overvalued. I think they're trying to understand whether the asset prices on the VFEX are truly or fairly reflective of the underlyings, that is to say, the company performances.
So, okay. Yeah, I also wanted to add flash also again, just to buttress what he had said. So if you look at a broader view of the market, not even the current performance. So the counters that are listed there, we have the mining counters, and they've recently been joined by the INSCO group related companies to include Simbisa, your Nut Foods, as well as recently INSCO. So this market is growing. I mean the VFX is growing, and also the emphasis when it was introduced, the emphasis was on the foreign investment to enable the companies that are going to list it to attract foreign funding. So because of that, you try to project to say what is the likelihood of getting more more participation from foreign investors getting there, and the counters listed there being able to access capital to refurbish their business to grow their markets. So it's that potential aspect that you would want to value or to make a decision based on. So if you look at that, I would agree with Chair that on a forward-looking basis, these counters, we would say they are undervalued because there is that potential. Then you also even look at individual, what they are doing in terms of growth perspective. I think everyone can testify that what is happening on the counters that are listed there in terms of their operations. The forward-looking, the counters are undervalued, and there's much potential should the foreign investment participation increase, and as well as themselves growing to other markets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brighton. Thank you, Chiesa. So I'm now jumping back again to the questions which are being posed in the chat box. So I'm not sure which one of our panelists is going to tackle this one, but if you feel you want to tackle it all, I'll give you a chance to do so. So the question is saying that kindly clarify on how best one can analyze company statements to make buying decisions, since most of the statements are based in ZWL.
I may go first, Robert.
Yeah, please,
I think
kindly proceed, Brighton.
It's a topical question in our community to try to assist investors in analyzing these statements. First of all, the requirement from ZSE is that they require audited financial statements. Then if these are audited financial statements for auditors themselves, it means these financial statements should be inflation adjusted. So that is the first point of reference for an auditor, that the numbers should be inflation adjusted. We have a problem when you look at inflation adjusted financials. The problem is that very few investors and people can understand those financials. The good thing is that in Zimbabwe, most of the companies, they are also publishing historical financials as a side on those inflation adjusted numbers. It kind of gives investors also maybe insight of the actual inflows that went to the company if the company is operating in ZWL. But the market is also evolving, Edwin. Why? If you look at our market, it's biased towards US dollar is for transactions as well as measuring value. We can even see that trend even for the counters that are going to VFEX. They are now preparing their financials in US dollar, which makes it easier for the investors. But the problem now is when a company is trading, they are trading maybe 50% in ZWL and 50% in USD. So it might also pose a challenge to actually measure the performance. The easiest way, or maybe to give comfort to investors or analysts, is to actually try to use for your ZWL average exchange rates, even if they are your official rates, you can just use to try and extrapolate how much US dollar business was generated by that company. Then you can as well do that. You can as well apply that average exchange rate on the expenses. From that, you can maybe have a fair, not so accurate picture of the US dollar business that is being generated by the company. Some of the companies, they are now also going out of their way and try maybe to indicate the proportion of the business generated in US dollar. as well as that in ZWL. It gives maybe a proper direction or maybe assisting investor or an analyst in analyzing those financials. Growth numbers can also assist. You may do away with the ZW numbers, but you look at volumes to say if the company is in the business of selling, maybe let's say maize, you say how many tons we sold last year, how many tons we sold this year, then what was the average market price, the international market price last year, then you can say average international market price this year. It kind of gives you the total sales of that company, US dollar terms, which may try to assist in analyzing. The ratios, if we are sticking to ratios, we may try to look at inflation-adjusted ratios. They kind of give you how the company is performing against inflation. Historical ratios, especially when we are in a hyperinflationary environment, they may not assist because, as you know, if the prices are being adjusted, obviously, you are likely to see inflated ratios there. So if there are ratios, strongly encouraged to use inflation-adjusted numbers. You may as well use the volumes, and you can also play around the ZW US dollar conversion for you to see the total performance of the business. Thank you.
Hi,
All right,
Adrian, if I may also add.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead, Chiesa.
So I'm in agreement with everything Brighton has said. I also just wanted to add that it's important to consider the qualitative factors as well. You can look at the business model, you can look at management expertise, and that can also inform your decision on whether to buy a company or not.
All right, thank you, Chiesa. I think that is very important. Thank you, Brighton, as well, for tackling that question which was posed by LC. And then another question, I think this one is directed to Robert. It's coming from Choa Lincoln. So, Robert, confirm if you are still with us.
Yeah, I'm still up.
Thank you. We can confirm that we can quite clearly hear you. So, Robert, Choa is asking, what's the future of the ZSE given the number of delistings which we have witnessed to date?
Thank you for that. I think what we have noticed are not necessarily delistings, but I think it's what the companies are doing to try to find relevance and how listing can continue to assist them in the capital raising process. So what we have done as a strategy was to still give issuers an option to say, should you want to raise capital, how do you want to raise it? So on that basis, I think given the volatility which is on the exchange rate, we all agree that to raise money in hard currency, in ZWO, it's a bit tough. Therefore, issuers are looking at an option that can help in sustaining their operations. So the way we see it, we still believe that the market is currently ripe for real estate investment trusts. And we still believe listings can still continue to take place in that space. It helps to remain for the ZSE to remain as a market. There are also different school of thought which comes to some issuers, obviously having loyalty to the ZSE to the extent that they still believe to remain listed as on the ZSE will still give value to them as an issuer. So we are looking currently at a particular segment which can take advantage of what is currently happening. And this is in the form of real estate investment trusts, and all the transfers that are coming, we believe they will come to an end at some point. And at that point, I think we also do steps to kind of continue to say, how do we maintain value on the ZSE? And one of the things that we've also been actively doing is to lobby to remove some of these distortions which we currently see. So it helps to preserve this market when, if we are successful in terms of lobbying, like on transaction cost, on the restrictions which are placed, will continue to have value proposition. So these are ongoing processes. They are not an event. We are trying to make sure we work with the relevant people to try to help us to see that we still want both markets to work, but there are things that they can help us to in terms of trying to reduce the burden currently that is there on investors. So I personally, I don't believe that ZSE is going to go. No, these exchanges, in our view, are going to complement each other. So I'm not sure whether I've answered Lincoln correctly, but that is our firm view.
All right, thank you very much, Robbie. There's also, I think, another question as well, which I think is also you can tackle, Robert. Somebody is asking that what are the issue prices that are assigned to counters which are migrating from ZSE to VFX on the first trading day?
So I would tackle that, but I think Chiedza, given that she's on the research side, I think she can do more, or Brighton, who is on the asset management side. But clearly, if you look at the prices that are obtainable on ZSE and ZWL, they can simply be converted at the official rate, and it migrates to VFEX, and then people can then try to find the right balance in terms of where it is given the fundamentals. But perhaps my colleagues can also assist in that.
Okay.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Robert. The issue of pricing, if it is on a listed market, it's not a problem at all, because investor, because of the efficiency, many people, many investors acting on that counter, it will find its true price. So whatever price that may be introduced on the introduction of VFX, the investors will find the correct price. It's more of a demand and supply. It's based on valuations. It's also based on the futuristic view of the investors. If they view that the price at introduction is high, you won't find enough supply to support that price, and it will drop. If they view it as low, the demand side actually pull the price higher until it finds its pricing. Also, when it now starts to trade, issues to do with dividend policy, the strategic direction of the business, it now gives more insights in terms of the direction of the company. And as the price will adjust appropriately given that strategic direction of the company. So pricing, it's not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Brighton, for that explanation. I'm also in receipt of another question. This one is directed to Chiedza Chonzi. Chiedza, there's somebody in the gallery who is asking, she's saying that I receive the VFEX prices on a daily basis, and I've noticed that there are net bank deposit receipts and as well as Caledonia deposit receipts. So she's asking, kindly describe to us what are depository receipts.
Thank you for that question. So depository receipts are equity-like instruments that trade on the local exchange, but they give you exposure to companies that are listed on a foreign exchange. So for example, with the Nedbank depository receipts. They are trading locally, but they're giving you exposure to Nedbank that is listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange.
Okay, thank you, Chieza. I don't know whether Robert or Brighton, you want to expound on that?
Look,
no,
it's pretty clear. It's pretty straightforward, I think.
Fairly straightforward, is it?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Chieza, for that. And then, Robert, somebody is asking you, do listed companies on the VFX declare dividend every year, or they vary?
Okay. Dividend declaration, it's a result which is made based on the profitability of a company. To say, do they have enough cash flows to for their operations, and if they feel that they have excess cash flow, dividends the company may make it a declaration in terms of dividends. So it's not on a yearly basis. It depends also with the company policy. To say, others would say people may borrow to pay a dividend, but you have to understand the dividend policy regarding that particular company. But it's not mandatory. These are self-decisions which are made by the issuer to say, are they in a position to pay that? If not, they may defer or they may pay. But our colleagues in the investment community perhaps can also assist on
that. Yes, like what you said, Robert, it's not mandatory. Of course, the company has its own long-term dividend policy, but sometimes there might be challenges, maybe in paying those dividends. Sometimes it might be a deliberate strategy by management not to declare dividend. Maybe they view that they have better opportunities. They may get a better return if they invest the funds themselves rather than paying it to investors. We have seen actually companies that do not pay dividends in the long term, but that strategy being supported by increase in the price, in the share price. So it's not always correct to view maybe the company not paying dividend as it is struggling. Sometimes it's just a deliberate strategy that can also be communicated. Sometimes they feel that they want investors maybe to have cash. They feel that they have excess cash. They can cover their capital requirements or working capital requirements, and they do have that access to distribute to the shareholders. In those cases, they declare dividend, but it's not mandatory, and also it doesn't necessarily mean that the company is struggling. I think that's what I can also add.
Okay, thank you very much for those responses, ladies and gentlemen. So to our audience, our guests, the floor is still open. If you have got any question or any comment, would you kindly raise your hand? We still have the floor open for discussions.
Okay, Eddie, sorry, if I may just come in. I think what we need to, for everyone participating in this forum, is to say, when you have an investment, what is key is to be able to understand the basics, to say, what is a share? If you're going to go and participate on VFX, what are you buying? What are the risks that are involved? How do you educate yourself to understand that particular risk? I'll give you an example. I do small farming for cattle. So one of the things that you do when you're doing cattle is to make sure that they are secure boundaries. Somehow you go collect them and feed them. You inject them. When you inject them for the vaccines for different diseases, you have to take care of your investment. So any investment that you make on the market, you have to understand its requirements. And one of these investment is that you have to accustom yourself to reading and getting information on a daily basis to understand the investment that you are holding. Markets do take fluctuations. So when they take fluctuations, you have to have a strategy to say, how do you buy your security? So your strategies in terms of how you come into the market, how you get in, and how you sell, they actually more important. So as we continue to make investments, let's take conscious decision to educate ourselves in kind of this investment. Where you don't know, this is where you go to these people, Brighton, to go to Chiesa or different stockbroking firms and ask to say, I've seen this, what does this mean? To an extent, we will also help you. From an exchange, we give you raw information, but from asset management and broking side, they give you perspective in terms of the analysis which they could have done. So it is important for you that on any investment that you go into, take yourself to educate about that investment. It is very key. Any investment that you have can only be protected when you are taking a conscious decision to know its risks and its benefits.
Yeah, I will support what Robert has also said. Understanding, I think Chieta also highlighted that, understanding the business model of the company. This one is also important, especially when there are price fluctuations over the year or over a period. For example, you might see a stock price dropping. Maybe you bought it at $100. Then a few days or 1 week later, you see that price dropping to 85 to 60. You start panicking. You say, oh, I'm losing money. Yeah, of course, investors, they sometimes do feel that way. But if you do understand the business model of the company, what it actually does, what it actually sells, it is actually helpful, and it will assist in terms of your reaction when some of these events occur. The risk of an equity investor lies in the potential closing down of a company that you are invested in. So rather than to say the price is dropping from this to so much, so I'm worried, ask yourself, what is the likelihood of this company shutting down? Then if you invest on that basis, even to say, oh, this product being sold by the company are supported in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, is there likelihood of this company existing in the next 10 years? You won't worry much about the price fluctuation because you do understand well the business model. I thought I would also add on to what Robert was saying.
All right, thank you, Brighton. Thank you, Robert. I see there is a hand there from Matthew. Matthew, kindly unmute and proceed to ask or make a comment. Hello, Matthew. Okay. It seems like Matthew is having some connectivity challenges there. Matthew.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear
Hello?
you, please. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. My question is just, I'm just trying to understand how the real estate investment trusts work, say for diasporians in particular who want to invest in companies listed on real estate. That how exactly does it work?
Okay, thank you, Matthew.
So real investment trusts, units like instruments where people come up with a theme in terms of what they want to do, and then their strategies, they develop a collective investment scheme based on the theme which they want to, like the one, I'll give you the one which is currently there for Tigere, which is listed. So this is an income, it is called an income REIT, where the funds which are aimed by that real estate investment trust are going to be distributed 80% to unit holders. So it is investing in commercial buildings, which generate rental income. And that income is then distributed at the end. Either the people may decide to distribute on a quarterly basis or on a half-yearly basis or at the end of the year. So you are buying into a commercial building and you own a small part of that commercial building. So for us, we believe that it's a better for valuation. It's easier. You can see that this property is valued perhaps at this much given the rental it is generating. Therefore, it becomes easier for you to value it. So when you then go buy, you then go buy knowing that this is a service station and people are going to be selling fuel. On that service station, there's a food court. The people are saying, so you kind of know that the activity which is generated around those buildings is what's going to come and get distributed either quarterly or half yearly. So it's a theme which the property developer will come up with to say you want to be able to run on this particular theme, and this theme now is going to generate income on this basis, and you then publish results based on its performance. So there could be different kind of risks that are there. There could be developmental, where you see a property is an area, you service it, you develop, you sell it. So it depends really with the theme which the promoters will be running. But perhaps the other guys may also want to add. So it's kind of unit. You're buying a unit, a part of that building. So it's an indirect way of owning, say, a building, a commercial building for that matter.
Oh, thank you very much for your response.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for that question. Thank you, Robbie, for the response. I'm also seeing that Zanda has got a hand up. Zanda, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My question, I think I did post on the chat box, but maybe you might have missed it. I was asking how different is it trading on VFX, the direct app, compared to trading on VFX using the C-Trade platform. Are there any risks associated with me trading on C-Trade? And should I be comfortable as much as I might be comfortable using the VFX Direct app? Then also, just as a suggestion or as a recommendation, is it possible for us to get contact details of your panelists? They seem to be very much acquainted with how this stock exchange works. And if need be, if there are no charges, definitely would want maybe to engage in different separate conversations if they are available. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Zenda, for that question. I will promise you that we'll share to our guests the contact details for all our panelists, and for our guests as well who have got questions which we might have missed. I promise you that we'll make an effort to formally respond to each and every one of these questions. So let me invite Robert to respond to that part of the question which you've posed. Robert, please go ahead on that one.
Yeah, thanks. It's a difficult question on C-Trade, but unfortunately, I don't use C-Trade, so I may not know enough to give you an informed decision to say this is how it works. But our understanding currently is integrating well and it's working well. And the VFX is also a platform where you can, I can comment specifically on the things that I have control, and we are very comfortable with ZSC Direct and VFX Direct because these are primarily our products.
Okay, thank you, Robbie, for that response. Let me open the floor once more to our guests. Should there be any questions, any burning issues which you might want to pose to our panelists? Okay. If there are none, I think as rounding off, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to invite Chieza just to give us sort of closing remarks as it relates to this discussion that we have been having around various important issues relating to investing on the VFEX. Chieza, please go ahead.
Thank you, Edwin. So just in closing, maybe for those interested in participating on the VFX, it's important as an investor to develop objectives. Don't go into investing blindly. Understand what you're trying to get out of the market and how you can get it out of the market. Also, read widely and do your research. Try not to be a passive investor. Keep an eye on the market, how it's performing, how prices are moving, what's affecting it. Have forward-looking ideas, and also speak to your broker and other market participants if you need help. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chieza. Brighton, what are your closing remarks to our audience as we close up this webinar?
Yeah, thank you. And just to add to what Chieza was saying, over and above being an active investor, from my side, I would encourage everyone to start, for those who have not yet started investing on the market, on the VFX. All this, what we are saying, will put to waste if someone is not actively participating on the market. As you go on, as you gain experience, you will find that it becomes easier, more exciting. Just encourage you also to have those discussions around the capital markets with the brokers, with the asset management team, and also other players that are experts on investment markets. Also to say that usually when your portfolio is small or growing, it's usually advisable to participate on the stock market aggressively. That way, you are able to build up your portfolio. I think from that, thank you, team. Thank you, listeners, as well as other panelists.
All right, thank you, Brighton. Robert, briefly give us your closing remarks to our audience.
Thank you very much. I think the others are just telling you about what you need to do, but what we are promising you is to try by all means. We're doing everything we can to try to excite you with new products. We do have a framework which is coming, which is your CFDs. Hopefully, we should be able to have something which could be traded in the next coming weeks. We are trying by all means to ensure that we do have various products where you can then put your money as an investment. But like everyone else saying, you have to understand the product that you are getting into. It is important. Otherwise, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for the participation. We are really grateful to have such a number in terms of participation, people listening, and let's keep engaging outside. If there are any issues that you want us, we are there to assist you.
All right, thank you, Robert. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that concludes our webinar. Let me also thank you once more and also invite you to please visit our ZSE and VFEX website. There is more information on our Training Institute column where you can learn more about investing. We are also present on Twitter, VFX and ZSE as well. Kindly follow us there, where we'll be giving you updates on every market development. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for taking your time. We hope this has been very helpful and insightful. We hope to see you again. Have a blessed Global Money Week.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Thank you.